Om Sitamakaranishanam Shubhravastram Trinetram Karadita Kalashodrit Sotphalabhityabhishtam Vidhi Harihara Rupam Setukoti Rajushtam Kalitasitadukulham Janhavim Tam Namami Namami Gange Tava Pada Pankajam Sura Surairvandita Divya Rupam Bhuktim Cha Muktim Cha Dadasi Nityam Bhavanusare Nasada Naranam Om Brahmanandam Paramasukhadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Ammaji, for such a wonderful prayer. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. A very warm welcome to all of our viewers to yet another session of Conversations with Consciousness. And today we have a very special guest, Swamini Pramananda ji, who is affectionately known as Ammaji. And we are very happy, we are very fortunate to have her here with us on our show. And she started with such a wonderful prayer. I don't need to again do the prayer for the program again. So let me begin with a short, brief introduction. Ammaji is the spiritual leader and visionary behind the organization Purna Vidya, which is based in Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. Born to spiritual parents, Ammaji grew up in an atmosphere of Vedic learning, and she has studied Advaita Vedanta in a traditional way under her teacher, Puja Swamiji Dayananda Saraswati ji. And after intense study of Vedanta, Ammaji has become a Sanyasini, and she has taught. She is still teaching Vedanta for last 35 years, and she has shared her uh, and continues to share her vision of oneness and harmony with seekers from around the world. And again, thank you, Swamini ji. Thank you, Ammaji, for accepting our invitation very readily and giving us your time. We are very fortunate to have you.
Thank you.
So, Ammaji, my first question is, how did it all begin? I mean, yes, you had a spiritual upbringing, but still, I mean, we all have kind of a journey which is very unique to us. So, how did your spiritual journey begin, and especially how was your introduction to Vedanta happened? So, please share us more about your life journey.
Well, those of us who were, born in the 40s and 50s, I'm one of those born in the 50s. We had a great privilege, a blessing of a great master, Swami Chinmayananda, who was really looked upon as a great revolutionary, a great visionary. And my parents, when I was about 3 years old, I was growing up in Mumbai, and they took their kids, that's myself and my Purvashrama brother, to Swami Chinmayananji because he would come and do these Gita Mahayagnyas in Mumbai on the beach fronts and in the Maidans and so on. And that was really the beginning of my journey, I would say. It all started with my own parents engaging in having these little Balvihar groups. And in those days, in Chinmaya Mission, the Chembur Balvihar, the Matunga Balvihar, this Matunga Balvihar and Chembur Balvihar were the two initial Balvihars that started. And my own mother was engaged in teaching. She was one of the teachers of the Matunga Balvihar. And so that's how as children, we joined the learning from very young age, even before we realized what was happening. And that moved on as a teenager into the Yuva Kendra, learning from with other teenagers. And Swami Chinmayananji used to visit Sandipani Sadhanalaya very often, and we were always there, inspired by him and adoring him, in awe of him. So this is how I would say, uh, consciously the journey began, in terms of spiritual learning. But I would say for me, this was like in 1962 was the first time I met Swami Chinmayananji in Sandipani Sadhanalaya. But from our birth, from my very birth, my father was a devout devotee of Shirdi Sai Baba. And so from my birth on, we always, every year, 3 to 4 times a year, we were visitors of Shirdi. Those days when Shirdi did not even have one hotel. There was not a hotel. There was just a dharmshala and there was a common space for your bath and so on. And from those days, I know I've seen Shirdi from very, very young years. And so Baba's life, my father always talked about Shirdi Baba's life. And as what a simple, great saint he was really God incarnate. Yes, we never saw Baba, but for me, Chinmayananji became one such saintly soul. And soon thereafter, um, he, he brought in his key disciple, Swami Dayananda, to Mumbai in 1971. And we were very much connected to the Chinmaya mission in Mumbai. And so that when we found out another great saint had come, so my family went to see him. And it was my birthday. I remember I was 11-year-old. And that was a very, very powerful, a very significant, my first meet with my guru, who really became my guru. Till today, he's the one who guides my life. I would say that meeting stands really apart even to this day. Yeah.
That's so wonderful. So you met your guru when you were only 11 years old. Can you share more about your life that started from there after your meeting with your guru? Uh, how did your more deepening engagement with the guru, with Vedanta happened? Perhaps some anecdotes you may have from your interaction with your guru. Uh, Anything to share?
One thing that stood apart about my guru, even in the early 70s, for all of us. And that was, he was always known as the mother of the organization. While Chinmayananji was looked upon as the father, Dayananji was looked upon as a mother. He had a very, very loving, tender, compassionate, motherly affection towards people. And I was very drawn to that. And I remember when I was still in school, we would go very often. My summer vacations were in the ashram. And my parents were so pious, so religious. They really wanted us to be in that environment as much as possible. But I remember one time asking Swami Dayananji while I was still in school, and I asked him, how can one human being be so perfect like you? I don't see in you any anger, any upset, any frustration, any irritation. I just see in you just always compassionate, always loving, always understanding, so tender. And I said to him, I want to be like you. Can I become like you? You know? And he told me, he said, yes, of course. All of us have this quality. You can become like me, but only if. I was so ready to do whatever it took. And he said, you need to study the Shastra. You need to learn what the scriptures say. When you learn the scriptures make you the way I am. It's all because of our great Rishi Parampara and the knowledge they gave us. And with this, you will become like me. You know, I took those words to heart. I was very innocent. I was young. Every word he spoke for me, it was God has spoken, so to speak. And so from then on, I wanted to study Vedanta because he said so. Not because I knew Vedanta had a value or what is Vedanta, because he said so and he was willing to teach. And so I wanted to learn. And I said, okay, I'll finish school and come. And I finished those days we had up to 11th standard and then we would go to college. So I finished my 11th and went back to him to join him. And he said, no, you need to get your degree. You're too young. Get your degree. So in the meanwhile, my older Purvashrama brother, he became a medical doctor. He got his degree. And so he was qualified to join the ashram. So he joined a 3-year study course in 1975. And I was going to college, so I was not equipped. But once I completed my college in 1979, it was very clear to me that I wanted nothing else but this learning of the scriptures from my guru. So that's how I got into Vedantic learning.
Wonderful, wonderful, Swaminiji. So, when did you become ordained into the sannyas ashrama? That happened much later, I would presume.
Yes. So I stayed with my guru for those 3 years of intense learning. And then again, because I was very young, he kept saying, I wanted to come to India and live in the Himalayas. Because, you always, I studied with him in Chinmaya Mission West, 1979 to 1982. So after I had done that in PRC, California, there was this dream to come to India and become a monk and live in the Himalayas. So when I said that to him and he said, no, you're too young to do that. You should be in society and teach. And so in 1982, he got me into teaching. One thing was I was brought up in a way you never said no to your guru. And so whether you agreed with him or not, whether you wanted or not what he said, because he said so, that was the right thing for you. And so you just did it. And that was my attitude. And so from 1982, I began to teach. And in New York, which is where I lived. And that led to Swami Dayananda wanting to create a program for the young generation on the culture, the heritage of sacred India, the sacred culture of India. So he assigned this work to me, and I began to do that work. In the process of doing that work, I recognized that I couldn't continue in the US. It was important for me to live in India, to be in on a Ganges bank or some place where I'm inspired. And so he allowed me to come back to India, and I stayed in his ashram in Rishikesh and wrote these wonderful book series of Vedic heritage. Took good 4 or 5 years, and he had a beautiful library in his ashram. So staying there and working with that library, and that's when the life, no more for me, Vedanta became it was never an academic pursuit, but there is a lot of academics in Vedanta. Like you learn Sanskritam, you learn Bhashyam, you learn Tarka, and and so on so forth. And so this kind of study was good, important, but living on Ganges banks and writing these books and recognizing that this is really a sadhu jivanam, there was almost a recognition that yes, this is my life. My heart is here, my soul is here, my love is Ganga. And I completely, it was very clear to me those years that there was no other way of living for me, what would be right. It wasn't about teaching. It wasn't about studying. It wasn't about getting degrees in Vedanta. It was about simply being a sadhu of the Himalayas and having the courage, the boldness, the commitment, the passion, and the way, the know-how of living and actualizing the teachings in one's life. So from then on, uh, my commitment became complete, and soon after, I was given sannyasa by my guru.
That's a wonderful journey, Ammaji. I mean, even listening to it is inspiring.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
You mentioned about your love for Ganga, and I think you even now you stay for many months a year in the Himalayas and in the banks of the Ganga, if I'm not wrong. And you have been involved in a lot of environmental work related to Ganga, related to climate change. So my next question is, it's a two-part question. One is, can you share more about the kind of ecological activities, the environmental activities that you are associated with? The second part of the question is, what is it? I can already see that the drive behind the love for environment is actually spiritual. So can you shed more light on this aspect? What is the place of ecology and environment in Sanatana Dharma as a whole? So this is a two-part question.
I would, Ganga for me, as you very correctly perceive, for for someone who's exposed to the Vedic Dharma, this word ecology, I don't know what is this ecology, environment, being pragmatic, treating our rivers, not polluting, not putting chemical waste because we need to drink and drink the same waters and so on and so forth. These are all very, very important aspects in talking about ecology, talking about environment. But that's not Vedic India. That's not spiritual India. That's not sacred India. Sacred India is, Vedic India is Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam means all that is here is divine. All that is here is divine means all that is here is sacred. When you say sacred, you have only one relationship with the sacred, and that is one of reverence. So there is nothing that is non-reverential. And so to be able to revere life, to be able to revere environment, which is life, for us, everything is life. For us, matter is not dead. We don't talk about Prithvi as a stones and rocks. Prithvi is a Devi. We don't talk about sun as some ball of gas. We talk about sun as Surya Deva. We talk about the hills as Lord Shiva, Arunachala. There is nothing in the vision of the Veda that is not sacred because the sacred is here and now. Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. And this being a metaphysical reality, this is for us not a theology. It is not for us a philosophy. Vedanta is a metaphysical reality. Like for a physicist, E equals mc square is an equation that either you know it or you don't. You may look at matter and think it is the final word until you recognize this matter is nothing but energy, atoms, electrons, protons, and so on. For that education, you require to go through a certain discipline of learning, no? For us, Isha Vasam Idam Sarvam is not a concept, it's not a theology, it's not a philosophy, it is a metaphysical truth. Aham Brahmasmi, Prajnanam Brahma, Ayam Atma Brahma. These are statements of the Upanishads, which our great Guru Parampara has revealed to us in the Sampradaya, unlocked the meaning, shown to us that this is the truth. And so when this is the truth, and we do have in this country, this ancient country, this age-old country, where thousands of years we have had tapasvis, sages, people, ascetics, saints, coming generation after generation, hundreds and thousands of them, this land is a sanctified land where the human consciousness awakened to this truth of this equation of oneness. And so, when I look at Ganga, when I look at anything for that matter, but for me, Ganga, for me, Himalayas is that icon of Bharat, of India, that till today stands as the spiritual backbone of this great ancient civilization. And so when people talk about the ecology of or the environment, it is people revered Ganga. You look at the Indian history, we have had kings and sages and seekers, scholars. We have had how many people who knew how to live not in merely physical reality, but who had the capacity to live in multi-dimensional universe. People who were tapasvis, they lived on Ganga banks. They were inspired by the Ganges. For them, Ganga was not H2O, hydrogen, oxygen, atoms. For them, she is Devi, she was a goddess, she is a goddess. And our Purvajas, our Rishi Munis, they knew how to commune with nature. They could have their dialogues with the gods, the celestials, the higher beings, and they could receive messages, no? They were able to live in a consciousness which was multidimensional. They were able to tap knowledge from them. Mahabharata was written by sage Vyasa with the help of Lord Ganesha. This is not a myth. This is the truth. You can call it a myth, or you can see it as your truth. And so in Badrinath, we have places that still till today show us that such a thing did happen 5,000 years ago. Every land there is so sacred. Munis like Parashara Muni and so many Rishi Shringa, and I mean, there are so many sages whose ashrams and places are still known. Those places are known by the tapas these sages did, like Markandeya and others. We know those places having lived in the Himalayas. I lived there for 12 years. I've explored the region, a land which is so sacred, which helps you see what society considers mythology, Puranas, Itihasas. There are people there who still, where time has frozen and they see it as a living reality. So for me, Ganga is not H2O. She's not somebody that you don't put your crap into her because that will affect your own drinking water supply. Of course, that's important as a society, but she's Ma, she's mother. And this is the way nature's intelligence has chosen for her to come from the higher worlds, reach the earth, travel in a certain way. She has carved out her path in her own omniscience. And I don't believe we have any right to push her into the mountains, to drill tunnels into the mountains and create dams and hundreds of dams on Ganga belt in the Himalayas, destroy the terrain. I think it is atrocious. It is chopping off the hands and legs of your own mother. And so for me, she is mother, Ma, which is true for many, many, many saints, many people in those villages whose very culture is grown around Ganga as Ma. And with all the environmental violations that have happened in this country, that continue to happen, for lack of sensitivity to life on earth or sensitivity to the philosophy and principles of the Veda, we don't realize what we are doing. We are playing with nature, we are playing with the environment, and that's not going to go. We cannot escape the impact or the repercussions of that. And so for me, my environmental work only meant one thing: wake up to spiritual India. Wake up to the sanctity that Ganga represents. She is sacred. Himalayas are sacred. They are till today, they carry those energies of the rishis, the sages, the celestial beings. And we as earthlings, human beings, It is a privilege, it's the greatest gift on earth to be able to live in the Himalayas and attune your life to the higher altar, which is what a spiritual life is about anyway, which is what every human life is about anyway. All of us are spiritual beings. We are not, we are not material beings chasing spirituality or going after spirituality. We are spiritual beings living in material reality. And therefore, the more and more we are able to own up the spiritual dimensions of our existence, we are we are really defeating our life by being so body connected and so materially oriented. And therefore, for me personally, Ganga and Himalayas is my last word in, they are the prana shakti of this planet. They are the spine of spiritual India, I would say spiritual earth. Earth is Mother Earth, Prithvi Devi. And if she has a spine, that spine is Himalaya and Ganga. And so this is how I perceive that land. And therefore, yes, I don't want to label myself as an environmentalist because I don't really do a lot of environmental work as such. But wherever I move, wherever I live, if I see the environment is not being looked after with sacred vision, with a vision of oneness, with a vision of protection of life, of course, I have a lot to say. And so my work in Himalayas, in the villages, with the people, has been more environmental protection, more owning up your sacred culture. And I've done some work along those lines in creating awareness, in working with women, in having, and the Ganga belt, I did a lot of work with finding out the Sthala Puranam of every region from Gangotri down, and which were the sages who lived where, what happened, and then creating boards, environmental boards, but also talking about the sthalam, the itihas of that place, which generally is not known to the people. People go to Ganga only to go to the dham. They don't know all the sages that lived between Uttarkashi and Gangotri. They don't know because nobody talks about it. And so I began to do work along those lines and became a spokesperson for Sacred India, Sacred Ganga, Sacred Himalayas. Yes.
That is a wonderful work, Swamini ji. Your enunciation of the topic reminded me of the lecture you gave in Palakkad, wherein you had mentioned that for a Hindu, all life is sacred and there is no dichotomy between sacred and secular. Unfortunately, what you have rightly highlighted in with respect to ecology become a become a everyday reality in every aspect of a Hindu life. The since modernity, since colonization, we have been so trained to think in a particular way that we have been completely alienated from our own Vedic vision, so to speak, or dharmic vision, that we see we always bifurcate between something secular, which is considered as important, which is considered as useful, necessary, and something as religious or sacred, which is considered as a superstitious, unnecessary thing. I mean, a good example, if I have to take from recent developments, is the Shabrimala issue, the whole thing, how based on a narrative of a borrowed, copy pasted narrative of equality and all those things, a tradition, a spiritual tradition, a tradition which is rooted in the deity's own instruction was tried to be, dismantled. So, and we see this actually happening every day especially with respect to Hindu traditions across India. It may be the stopping of Pashubali in certain tantric temples, or in the Shabarimala, or the dismantling in Shani Singapura, or the ecological things that is happening in the Himalayas. So, how do you see what, according to you, is a solution to this? I mean, how with each passing generation, our children are becoming more and more alienated from Hindu view of life, and more interiorizing the modernity's view of life, kind of secular view of life. So, yeah, please share your thoughts on.
It's a wave. It's a wave. And the wave of a collective consciousness, individuals cannot break it. It's a wave. It has to go through its own rhythm and cycle and return. And so, like everything else, you find that while on one hand, there is a lot of distortion in this country about the Dharma itself, I'm not surprised. It is not surprising because we have suffered 1,000 years of absolute aggression and suppression of this great tradition, right? 1,000 solid years means how many generations lived in suppression, in oppression, in being apologetic for being a Hindu. We are apologetic, and we don't even know why. We are embarrassed. We don't even know why, because it's there in the genes. It's coming down for 1,000 years. And so it is not a simple thing to shift the consciousness of a civilization, of a culture of people who have gone through so many generations of oppressions and suppressions where the culture has been shattered. You even look at some of the writings in the 17th century, 18th century of great French philosophers and others, like Voltaire and others, when they talked about India in those days, they talked about India as being simply out of a unique place on earth, unlike everything else they have seen. They talk about the impeccable honesty, the high education, while Britain still had, education was in only in the royal families. In this country, every village there was education. Women had education. Women were as much trained in the Vedas like the men were. They were rishis, they were rishikas. They were Brahmavadins, they were Brahmavadinis. There was a Gargi, there was a Maitreyi, there was Apala, there were so many women, scholars and saintly people in Vedic India. And therefore, that India was shattered over the decades, over hundreds of years. And it is over time, of course, and it was only in the last 70 years after India became independent that we have begun to stand on a soil where we can think for ourselves, no? But when you think for yourself, you look around, what do you have? Your own culture has been broken into pieces for 1,000 years. What are you going to recover? It's a breakdown of a chandelier. Every glass piece is burst into so many pieces. And so the Hindu consciousness has to wake up again. Hindu consciousness needs to be educated, needs to understand their roots. We don't know our roots. We don't. And not only we don't know our roots, we were told whatever roots you have, is primitive. It was one of those scholars who wrote Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. The opening prayer of Ishavasya Upanishad was written about by one of these people as the prattlings of an infantile mind. This is how our great scriptures were put in the derogatory terms again and again, over and over again. And it was only the white man who had the right answers. And many of our people, consciously, subconsciously, unconsciously, or genetically, over 2-3 generations, we have somewhere picked up and carried those leanings that the answer is not here, the answer is in crossing the ocean. The answer to life is in crossing the ocean. We label ourselves as underdeveloped country, developing country. That means you declare what is developed nation, right? And you declare the what do you call, the framework of a developed nation. And so that becomes the ideal to work for. What if your own definition of a developed nation is nothing to do with the external world, but it has everything to do with the soul and living a human life in a multi-dimensional existence? If that is your definition of a developed civilization, then would you go anywhere else? You would only go deep and deeper into your own roots. The world came to Bharat not because of just material prosperity. India was declared decades ago, hundreds of years ago, centuries ago, as the mother civilization of the planet. She was declared as a spiritual civilization of this planet, and rightly so, because this is the land which has the answers to human life and human happiness. This knowledge, this tradition has been affected by those 1,000+ years of what we went through.
And continues to be affected.
It will, but I cannot say our people are not waking up. Fortunately, the people whom we look up to and we want to be like them, they are the ones who are waking up to our culture, because their developed approach has not delivered happiness, peace, joy, fulfillment, satisfaction. And so they are in search of a new definition of what is human life all about. And they keep coming back to us because we are looking out there. The hope is eventually we will also follow them and come back here, like we talk about Dravida Pranayama. You can do pranayama like this, but we go find your nostril by going right around. And so we are on this chase. Dravida Pranayama answers are here, but we need the outsider to come and tell us, hey, your answers are here. And then we say, oh, really? Okay, now let me look. So our people are waking up. Thanks to the popularization of yoga, Ayurveda, all these waves that exist, on the planet today, that our people are waking up. A lot of effort is being put in, but of course the political scenario is a different ball game. And so the more and more people's consciousness is raised to recognizing the sacred India, the spiritual India, the sanctity. There is no Bharatiya Samskriti. There is no Indian culture called Indian culture, Vedic culture, unless there are two attitudes in the consciousness of every Indian. One, reverence. Two, gratitude. Reverence and gratitude forms the core approach towards life where it comes to the consciousness of the Vedic thought. People are into materialism so recklessly because they do not know how to be satisfied with what you have. There is no sense of gratitude. Why? Because you're always seeing what you don't have. You don't have time to see what you have, you know? And so this is a culture that taught us to see what you have. Never look at what you don't have. Always look at what you have, and you will be grateful. Your head would be bowed. And so gratitude and reverence is the greatest beauty and strength of this great culture, the unique civilization of Vedic India. And I would call it the most docile civilization that earth ever saw is Vedic civilization. Docile, docile. We are docile. We are not an aggressive civilization. We are peace-loving, docile civilization. And that's the reason why our capacity in our own philosophy to accommodate any religion, anyone, any group in distress. The Persians were in distress, they came here. The Zoroastrians were in distress, they came here. Whoever came here, they never left here, right? We always absorbed because we were never afraid of or insecure about our dharma. This dharma is bigger than all of us put together. It sits in the hands of the divine. And therefore, those who wake up to the divine vision will be in tune with the dharma. Everyone else is only, you know, uh, it's like blind leading the blind.
Swaminiji, you have beautifully captured the role of India in a sense and waking up. So, how do you see Vedanta as a darshana, not a philosophy, but as a darshana, playing role in our society in the current very fluctuating situation, helping towards uh, what are the modern goals like global peace, harmony, and such things? How can Vedanta as a darshana contribute to
I do not go with Vedanta as a darshana, as we do talk about Vedanta academically. In the vision of my guru, Vedanta was never one darshana, because a darshana is a philosophy, but he always saw Vedanta as a truth. It's a truth of oneness, the underlying oneness of life. And it's a truth which is given in equations, master equations, like Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi. And therefore, for us, this truth is an equation to be discovered. It is not a philosophy that you may choose to own up or not. For every sannyasi who lives in the parampara, of Advaita Vedanta, he takes to this life of monkhood to actualize, to live the truth of this metaphysical equation in his own life by actualizing the truth. And therefore, for me, it is not a darshana, number one. Number two, if I were to say something in the words of my guru, he would say that it was also never a darshana. It was always the whole system of Vedic education was such that you learned Tarka, you learned Mimamsa, you went through Purva Mimamsa, you went through Uttara Mimamsa, you went through Sankhya, you went through Yoga, you went through the different aspects and the elements. Every one of them contributed to reaching the Uttara Mimamsa, which is the Vedantic learning. And so in his vision, all the Tarka is not to own up the philosophy of Tarka. All the Tarka Shastra is meant for you to sharpen your intellect. All the Mimamsa is not to become a Mimamsaka. The Mimamsa studies were meant for us to recognize the Aikyam that the Upanishads talk about. And so Adi Shankaracharya's in the Prasthana Trayi studies, our learning as ascetics, as people committed to this order of actualizing this learning in our own lives, we look upon these different aspects, different darshanas, as only different different perceptions, but not the whole truth. We don't believe in calling Vedanta a darshana because you're calling it a perspective. Vedanta is not a perspective. It is a culmination. It is the basis of all perspectives. It is the culminating point. It is the foundation. It is like the blind men trying to understand what is an elephant. And one man says, oh, yes, this elephant, it is like, we have never seen, but it is like a rope because he's holding the tail. It's like a rope. The other one says, no, it's like a pillar. He's holding the leg. The third says, no, it is like a wall because he has hit the body of the elephant. Not that they are wrong. They're all right. But these are different perspectives. Each interpretation is only a perspective, but the equation, the truth is not a perspective. Truth is not a perspective. Truth is a revelation. And it is what it is. No matter whatever be your perspective, it doesn't depend on, it is Vastu Tantram. It is not Purusha Tantram. If you look at Vedanta as a darshana, you talk about it as a Purusha Tantram. But Vedanta is Vastu Tantram. It is as true as the Vastu, the object that is under analysis. And so the language of Aikyam in Advaita Vedanta is a living equation. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitram Iha Vidyate. It is the greatest secret of the universe and the most purifying and the truth that has been given to us by divinity himself. And so, yes, so coming back to your point, if you take this as your truth, then how do you How does this translate into society, right? It translates in every way. Every way. In Dharma, truth translates. In anything you do, in your karma, it translates. In swakarma, in karma yoga, in yoga, whatever be your path, the various forms of worships in the agama, truth does not oppose anything. Truth accommodates everything. And so within the large samudram, any of the things that society requires at a given time, age, that samudra is able to accommodate. Only samudra can accommodate the different waves that come and go. Why this dharma is called sanatana? Because it is eternal. It has accommodated so many waves of invasions. It has accommodated times of Satya Yuga to Kali Yuga. It can accommodate because it doesn't go away. It is sanatana. Its principles are eternal. And that is Vedanta. Vedanta, if it is not Vedanta, which is the adhara of the system, the culture, we would have been gone long ago. We would have been a dead civilization by now. Like the Greek, the Egyptian, the American Indian, they're all civilizations sitting in the libraries or in reservations. They're not alive in society. It's not a living culture. But this is a living culture because its principles are eternal. Its truth is eternal.
That is perfectly wonderful. They put us, Ammaji. I think this is the vision which is kind of missing from the lot of people. They don't have this clarity, which is kind of leading us to going here and there and everywhere. Now coming to my next question is, you mentioned about authoring this Vedic heritage books while sitting on the bank of the Ganga, and it took you 4 years. So, and I have the all the whole set with me, and I have read through it, and I have recommended the book to many people. It is one of the best books available, and I recommend it to all the audience who will be listening to this session to buy this book and teach your children the basics of Hindu Dharma. So, what my question is, what are the challenges did you face while writing it? I mean, it is such a huge effort. I mean, especially writing to children is very difficult. Writing to adults is, I think, is 20 times, 30 times easier than writing to children. So, can you please shed a light on what kind of challenges you faced and how did you overcome it, or any other tips to those who want to write about Dharma and Moksha and Vedanta for children?
It's it's a tough question to answer because there are multiple dimensions in this. Number one, the children, writing for children for me was the easiest part because the children themselves helped me. I was teaching adult classes, children classes in New York for about 10 years before I began this project of writing. And so, whenever I wanted to share a concept in a playway method, I would ask the children of different age groups, do you like this game? How would you put this concept in a game form? I would ask them, and do you like this game I have put together? And they will tell me, frankly, yes or no. And if they didn't like my game, I would ask them, then you tell me how to put this across. And working with the children, creating games, and as we kept creating, working with the children who were already studying with me, it was a great, they were my strength, to make these games so realistic. It wasn't in an adult imagining games. It was an adult actually creating the games with the children as to their liking. And so writing of the workbooks of Purna Vidya was the easiest part for me. In fact, just very different from what you imagine. The tough part was the text, writing the text, because there was no path laid out before. I had no, I searched and searched for whether I could find some books for children that would talk about our dharma in our country. I'm sorry to say, not one, not one. I have gone through every publisher in Delhi. Munshira, Manohar Lal, Motilal, Banarsi Das, Chaukamba, this, that. I went all over Bharati Vidya Bhavan. They had their little books for the school children. People had something, but nothing to cover the tradition, the Shastra that I had learned from my guru. And when he asked me to write, he wanted me to write as a study program, methodically. And I visualized it being as like a school education, but there was no way to go anywhere. There was no reference books available. And so it became a very big challenge. I had taken the commitment. Expectations from my guru was very high, and I found myself very, very inadequate. And so when I came to Rishikesh and stayed there, believe me, writing Purna Vidya books became my own personal journey into the heritage of India, because I had to connect, I had to feel, I had to uh, be identified with my project. I had to be able to visualize what it was those days, how children would have studied, what kids need to know. And my Purvashrama brother, Shridhira Chaitanya, who is a medical doctor, an adult child psychiatrist, he and I worked very hard. I would constantly share with him the challenges, and not being able to find resources anywhere. Dhiraji's work in this was as a psychiatrist and as a child psychiatrist. He was able to help in connecting the levels of the psyche, how far we can go with kids, what concepts we should give at this age, what concepts we can give at the next age. And so he was always there for creating the framework with me. Not only that, a bigger blessing, the biggest blessing I received was when I sat on Ganga banks and I wrote, not knowing what to write, not knowing what is the curriculum, what is the topic, how much to do. There have been days and nights when my pen won't stop writing. There were days and nights where so much inspiration would come, I do not know from where. And I believe the blessings of the goddess was so much in my life that she guided the whole process of creating these books. I really believe that, because I could not imagine, I had never seen myself as an author. I never had all that great language. A good sadhaka. That's all. These are all my little things that I carried, my strength, which was so inadequate, so inadequate. But what came out of it all eventually was something I cannot. Many a time when I see these books, I look at my brother and I ask him, did we really write this? Is it really our work? Because it was, yes, it was a very time of tremendous turmoil for me personally, a lot of conflicts, lot of turmoil, lot of restlessness when I was able to write when I wanted. When I wanted to write, no words would come. When I would be sleeping, I would have a flow of ideas and I would have to get up and write. And those days in Rishikesh, we had a lot of electricity problems. So I had some good monks around me who helped me with manual typewriters to type the manuscripts. And so in this way, these books were written and really they became the first of its kind in the country to really give authentic education on spiritual India with principles of Dharma and so on. It became the first series of its kind, the first of its kind, and so comprehensive, so complete. And we have been very grateful to the Shankaracharyas who, who generally don't recommend books, but the Purna Vidya is a set that they will always. When Jayendra Saraswati was there, our Vijayendra Saraswati Swamigal, Mahaswamigal, they have for decades recommended Purna Vidya books as the authentic book in keeping with the tradition, in keeping with the Shastra, having the modernity to reach out to Hindus from across the globe. And that's precisely what Purna Vidya has done. We have entered into schools in India. For the last 25 years, I'm working with schools, education systems, different institutions, different communities all over the world, temple communities, Hindu communities, wherever anybody wants to know about the heritage, we are there to teach. It is Hindu work, it is Dharma work, and it is also a very, very user friendly book. So, whether you connect with the authors or not, there have been many groups who have been teaching Purna Vidya who don't even know me or I don't know them. And it never mattered. My guru's vision was so big. He always said, just give it to the people. It should reach every Hindu home. It doesn't matter how it reaches, whether they acknowledge us or not. The content is so powerful. And I saw in him, he used to tell people, look, I'm not sure how much I can reach these books. He used to say, but I think you have a better, what do you call this? You're a lot more people with you. You do one thing, tear the authorship, tear the first page, put your name, but get it out to public, he used to say. I used to be amazed. He never checked with me. Can I remove your name and put somebody else's name? He never asked me. He was so confident that his child will 100% walk the path that he walks. That I would see his magnanimity of his vision the way he saw. And I seen him telling people, reach this program to every Hindu because it has everything from Panchatantra to Bhagavad Gita. If every adult only studied this, every Hindu only studied Purna Vidya, you will not only know the spiritual India, you will also understand the sacred culture of India. And that is the spirit with which these books have been written. And I do consider them really a divine gift. It's not our gift, it's a gift of the divine. We were instruments in setting up situations to bring about the propagation of our sacred culture.
Indeed, Ammaji. Especially the methodological presentation. That is what I like most about the book. That it takes one, even the books though written for in a school format, it is equally useful for the adults as well. It takes anybody without any, with zero knowledge about Hindu Dharma, on a kind of, it holds our hands and takes up to stage by stage by stage. That is what I personally also love most. It is my one of my favorite, all-time favorite books actually.
I'm so happy, and you have to be grateful to Ma Ganga for this. It is all her work, really. It's
She
her work.
should.
If I wasn't sitting on Ganga banks, I'm not sure it would have come out the way it did, you know. And
Amma,
so,
Ammaji, apart from this, the work of this Vedic heritage books, what other activities is Purna Vidya Foundation involved in? Can you just briefly share with our
yes.
audience?
So as a student of Advaita Vedanta, someone who studied Prasthanatrayi with Swami Dayananda, my great guru, and also spent many years in Panini and Sanskritam studies with my Acharya, Pradhan Acharya of our organization, Swami Siddha Bodhananda. I look upon Purna Vidya as really Purna. It is complete in teaching the philosophy, in teaching language, and in teaching heritage. And so we have retreats, we have camps, we have courses, short courses on the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Sanskritam studies go on, as well as heritage training. So while we look upon heritage work as a general work in society for one and all, people who want to go more in depth, they come to us for Vedantic learning and they come stay and study. We have students who have been studying with us for a long time. And I have also, in the last few years, 3, 4 years, started to record these Bhagavad Gita courses that I taught. And we make these video courses available. So we have some beautiful courses online and may have many groups of Gita Swadhyaya groups, Gita study groups in UK, in Europe, in Singapore, Malaysia, US, different parts of the world, where a few students come together and weekly they learn the Bhagavad Gita through the videos. And it's not just learning, it's not just my teaching of unfolding the teachings. We also have reading materials. We also have reflections on every chapter. So they do their work, they do their own reflections. It's a very detailed program for a good 3 years it takes for them to complete. Similarly, with thanks to the pandemic situation, we created online Sanskritam teachings also, and we are teaching my own Pradhan Acharya Guru, Swami Siddha Bodhananji, and myself. We are teaching in online spaces Sanskritam classes, heritage classes. We have many teachers who are students of Vedanta, Sanskritam, and they are teaching the Vedic heritage books in the online space to the children, and also training people who want to learn and share. So we have a few times a year, we have teacher training done by our global coordinators, and they train the teachers, and then we create platforms for bringing in children and giving them the teachings of Purna Vidya. This is apart from helping other organizations teach. So I was involved with many organizations who wanted to do something, but they don't have materials. And unfortunately and interestingly, not every organization shares their material with other organizations. You don't see that, unfortunately. Purna Vidya stands apart. Purna Vidya, the way Puja Swamiji envisioned and taught us, We share our materials with one and all. You may belong to any organization. You may have your own guru. You may have your own lineage. But if you think that you don't have what we have and you want what our resources, these resources called Purna Vidya books and our teaching model, we train your people and we help you integrate the materials into your organization. Like this, we have helped many organizations, Hindu groups in India, abroad, and they have, with our materials, they have been able to, develop and grow and found their strength, because it is Hindu work. We consider all this as our work. So we cannot afford to be exclusive. Hindu ethic is an inclusive ethic. Hindu philosophy is an inclusive philosophy, and therefore, if you do a good work, then I would love to be included with you. And if I do good work, I must have the magnanimity to include you in my work. And so, in this spirit, Purna Vidya also complements other organizations. We will go along with other groups, and this way we do our work, we share, and it's all about Vedanta and Vedic heritage and Sanskritam language studies. I will also like to add here, I have many students who are Europeans, who are yoga teachers in Europe, who have learned from various schools of yoga all over India, and many of them study Bhagavad Gita from us, and I teach them Yoga Sutras from the perspective of Bhagavad Gita, showing them the parallels and how the Yoga Sutras need to be seen with the vision of oneness. And we have many good yoga teachers who are students of Sanskritam and the Bhagavad Gita, and doing their regular learning in this manner through Purna Vidya Foundation.
That is wonderful, Ammaji. That is such a wide range of very important work, and you have been dedicatedly doing it for such a long time. So, with this, Ammaji, we come to almost a conclusion of this session. So, I have one final question, just a final closing remarks from you. Any advice you have for the seekers of Vedanta? Any new people who want to take up Vedanta?
It's very important to understand that Vedanta is truth. And if I am a seeker of truth, then until I'm able to see the truth as Vedanta presents, that I do not give up. That I do not give up. I do not change my path. Vedanta talks about truth, that is, you are that which you seek. And therefore, it is not about becoming a full being, Purnaha. It is about being who you are. And so there are very powerful metaphysical statements in Vedanta that one needs to very deeply appreciate, because it is always about here and now. Atma is swata siddhaha. Atma is as of now, here and now, this moment, Purnaha. When my essential nature is Purnaha, and I am in search of Purnatvam, then there is something either wrong in my search or wrong in my understanding of who I am. And therefore, it is important that seekers of Vedanta or seekers of truth learn to recognize the tradition, the parampara. The parampara has certain prakriyas, certain master key. Prakriyas are master keys through which the Upanishad unlocks this truth that you are that which you seek. And so the immediacy of knowledge that Vedanta presents makes it very, very powerful and real. And it should never be postponed to a future moment of enlightenment. Vedanta is not a futuristic proposition. We are not sadhakas, we are siddhas. It is a siddha vastu. Atma is a siddha vastu vishaya, not a sadhya vastu vishaya. And so, while we look upon ourselves as seekers of knowledge, of truth, Vedanta tells us as long as you are the seeker, you will never know yourself as the sought. You are the one that you are seeking. The seeker is the sought. When the seeker is already the sought, and what you are doing is trying to become the sought. And this process of becoming the sought itself denies you the sought. And so it's not about being a seeker. It is about really taking refuge in a guru of this parampara who can unlock the great revelations with this master key that the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita gives us in the spirit of understanding what? Na idam iti. While I experience duality, the metaphysics declare that all that is here is non-duality, correct? The metaphysical truths don't necessarily need to align to your experiential truths. You may experience duality, but metaphysically, all that is here is one seamless consciousness. This is the truth. It is not a perception, it's not a philosophy, it's not a darshana. It is metaphysical truth of a great master equation given to us, revealed to us in the Veda. And therefore, my advice is, I don't even know if I can advise because we are always chasing the truth. You will never become that which you seek because you already are that which you seek. And therefore, you have to only know, you have to shed the ignorance that the answer is out there because the answer is you. The problem is you, the solution is you. My great famous statement of my guru. The problem is you, the solution is you. And so The day you stop seeking, you will discover that you are that which you sought. It's about letting go. It's about na idam, na idam. Mano buddhya hankara chitta ninam. Na cha shrota jekwe, na cha grana netre. न च व्योम भूमिर्न तेजो न वायुः चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् अहं शिवः अद्य इदानीं I am here and now Shivaha. Not that I will become Shivaha. Bhavishya Kale doesn't talk about the nature of Atma in the future. If you do pranayama, if you do this practice, if you do that, if you do that, do to do what? Do to become that you already are? Doing doesn't lead to being. Doing only leads to sleep, exhaustion. To be who you are, you need to be who you are. There's nothing to do in order to be. Then what should I do, Ammaji? I just said there's nothing to do in order to be. Simply be. Learn the art, learn the skill of being who you are. And not being that which you are not. Don't own up swabhava of the body, of the mind, of the senses which you are not. Disown. Disown that which you are not so that you can truly be who you are. And so the process is reverse. It's about letting go. It's about dropping. It's about calling the bluff that duality is a reality. The Shankaracharya, in so many words, all our acharyas have declared this so beautifully. Nirupama nitya niramshakepya khande मयि चिति सर्वविकल्पनादिशून्ये घटयति जगदीश जीव भेदम् अघटित घटना पटीयसी माया अघटित घटना पटीयसी माया. All that is here is one consciousness, but you don't see that. What do you see? Jagadisha Jiva Bhedam. I see the Triputi. Jagadisha Jiva Bhedam. Is this Bhedam real? Is this duality real? No. It is not. How do you say it is not? Because Nirupam. Nirupama Nitya Niramshake Akhande. That which has no amsha, that which is akhanda vastu, has been made to appear as khandita. It is an appearance. It is not real. And therefore, being an appearance, understand, it comes from, it's an illusion. Yama samaya. It is not, but it appears to be. That's called an illusion, no? Agatita ghatana patiyasi maya. And therefore enjoy the experiences of duality as a leela. Don't take it as real and unnecessarily suffer and go in search of that akhanda swarupa truth, which already you are. This is a repeated message in hundreds of thousands of writings, and really it finally boils down to only one truth. What is that? Ardhashlokena pravakshyami yaduktam grantha kotibhihi Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. Ananta Koti Bihi, it has been said, thousands of scriptural statements. Adi Shankara says, I will say in half a line. In saying that, already the first half is over. Second line is all he has left to reveal the truth. And he reveals so beautifully, so succinctly, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. What he can give in half a verse, this great Acharya can give in Eka Shloki, Kim Jyotistava Bhanumana Hanime Ratrau Pradipadikam Syadevam Ravidipa Darshana Vidhau Kim Jyotirakhyai me Chakshustasya Nimilanadi Samaye Kim Dhiyo Darshane Kim Tatrahamato Bhavan Paramakam Jyotistadasmi Prabho Aham Jyotihi. In Eka Shloki, what he says in half a sentence, he says in Eka Shloki. He says in Dasha Shloki. He says in Upadesha Sahasri. He gives a Prasthana Trayi Bhashyam because there is only one thing to talk about. And that truth is declared in the most succinct manner. If you don't get it, work, study, learn. Still don't get it, keep learning until you learn to call the bluff. Don't allow the bluff to pose itself as real. And our body is, our mind is, anything that comes in the 5 elemental model has only a limited value. And for every sadhaka, these things, these founding principles need to be laid out very clearly. You require really the blessings of the divine. We always say in the tradition, 3 things is durlabham. Durlabham trayamaiva tat daivanugraha haitukam. Mumukshutvam manushyatvam mahapurusha samshrayaha. May every seeker pray for this burning desire to know your truth of the highest, number 1, and does not make you inhuman. Become so human, so pure in your humane nature. This needs another blessing of the divine. I may be a sadhaka, but I'm ready to kill everybody who comes in my way. Then you will never complete your sadhana. And therefore, mumukshutvam manushyatvam. And thirdly, mahapurusha samshrayaha, a guide, a refuge, a sharanam, where a guru who can take me to this great Vedic learning connects me to the eternal dharma. For these 3 things you need grace. Daivanugraha haitukam. And so if you are a seeker of truth, be a good devotee, pray, pray, and pray. Bring praise in your life, remain humble, live a life of gratitude and reverence, and seek those breakthroughs from divinity himself to give you the right path, the right people, so that you never get sidetracked and you reach your destination living in this human life itself. And this is really my prayers and my blessings to all my family of seekers all over the world, that this is all that matters. And the journey to oneness is journey to Godhood. Journey towards Godhood can only be with the help of God. He has to become my best friend, the best ally. And how will I make him my friend unless I invoke him, I call him, I talk to him, I engage with him, I ask his support. And therefore, either you can be a devotee to the Lord or you be one with him. There's no third option for a seeker. And so, a life of devotion and prarthana is really what is required in every seeker's life.
Thank,
That's, yeah.
thank you very much, Ammaji. It was such an enlightening and very insightful session on the behalf of entire Advaita Academy. On behalf of all our viewers, I thank you for agreeing to this interview and for sharing this vision of oneness, sharing this very important aspect that we are not the seeker, we are already the sought, and and we need to anchor ourselves in this understanding, and also sharing about other aspects of heritage, about Ma Ganga and so many things. We have been very fortunate by your presence and by your enunciation, and again thank you for doing this with us.
Thank you. And
Viewers,
I thank Advaita Academy for giving us this opportunity and your platform inviting us so that we can reach this message of oneness to as many people as possible. That's all humanity is looking for today. And so it is a wonderful opportunity. And we, from Purna Vidya, we thank all of you. And I would love to, I'm sure you will close with a prayer, but if you wish, I can also do a prayer. Yeah.
uh, yes, yes, definitely, Ammaji, please. We loved your opening prayer, and it would be great if you do the closing prayer.
Thank you. वन्दे देवमुमापतिं सुरगुरुं वन्दे जगत्कारणम् वन्दे पन्नगभूषणं मृगधरम् वन्दे पशूनां पतिम् वन्दे सूर्यशशाङ्कवह्निनयनम् वन्दे मुकुन्दप्रियम् वन्दे भक्तजनाश्रयं च वरदम् वन्दे शिवं शङ्करम् वन्दे भक्तजनाश्रयं च वरदम् वन्दे शिवं शङ्करम् ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ
Viewers, with this, we come to a conclusion of yet another session of Conversations on Consciousness. And please follow us on Facebook and Twitter to know our more events. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha.